Club podcast. I'm your host, Claudia Campbell, and today I have a very special guest with me, someone who I have been looking forward to for weeks now. You guys probably know her as a girl with Jesus, but I'm here with Amelia. Hello, Amelia. How are you? Today, I'm super excited. We have a lot of topics to talk about. As you guys know, if you follow her, she's in the cutest relationship that's very Christ-centered. So we're going to dive into that. We're going to talk about that. But we also today are just going to talk about how to make the most of being where you're at, how to make the most of life. We all have challenges. We all have hard times, but how do you plug yourself in? How do you keep those friendships? All that jazz. So without further ado, Amelia.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited.
Of course. Okay, so just give the people who don't know you a little bit of a background.
Yeah.
You're on social media. How did you
And
start? When did you start? All that jazz.
it's actually kind of a fun story. So a lot of people have asked me, like, Amelia, how did I get started with social media? And I literally tell this to everyone. I was walking down my hallway and I heard God say, start an account called The Girl with Jesus. So I ran to my phone and I just started the Instagram account and started just posting Bible pictures, and then it kind of just took off from there. So that's kind of just where it started.
I love that. That's crazy because God doesn't always speak in those like vivid ways, but when he does, you're like, okay, I gotta go do this.
I was
Okay,
like, I have to do this. So.
Yeah. Okay, so when did you start on social media? How long have you been doing it?
About, I want to say almost 2 years. So
Okay.
It's been a little while.
So that was around the same time I started my social media. Okay, that's awesome. And how old are you?
I just turned 16 yesterday, 2 days ago.
She just got her license, everyone. Let's
did.
go. If I had a soundboard, I would do like the little clappy button thing. 100%. I wish I would. You know what? I'm gonna buy that for the podcast just so that I can do that eventually. I love that. Okay, so 16. How does social media account? I remember whenever I first saw you. So I want to say one of my friends reposted one of your things, or I'd seen your relatable content, but like I just was like moving on because I wasn't really like consuming social media that much.
Yeah.
And then I remember like months later, like you know how you see people, you're like, oh, that's a cool video, but you don't follow them. And then months later you see their stuff and you're like, oh,
Yes.
I'm gonna follow them. That's kind of how it was. And I remember I loved your content because I was like, this girl like talks about Jesus, but she also loves clothes and she also loves her family and fashion. And I love people like that because I'm like, obviously I like the people who just talk about Jesus and that's their thing. That's amazing. But I love the people who I'm like, I feel like I'm actually getting to experience them as a person through this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you, just start out for the people who follow you, they know, like, I love your little reels, your vlogs about, like, your family and, like, all of that stuff. And you just seem to me, like, even through the camera, to be just, like, an amazing friend to people, like, just a joy and a light. And I know that there are a lot of DMs I get, and I'm sure you get these types of DMs too, that are just like, okay, Amelia, like, how do I make friends? How do I keep those friendships? Even long distance ones, because I know that that's something that we have in common. Both of us have, like, long distance friends. How do you keep in contact with them? So let's just start out first with, how do you find, what are some tips for making those good solid Christian friendships?
Honestly, so I actually watched your video of you're getting ready with the get ready with me with like your friend one, and I saved I was like, I'm gonna like take that idea and like run with it. I loved it because it was so true. You talked about how you have to become the type of person that you want to be for the type of friend that you want. And so I think a lot of people are like, and I personally I did this too, and I was like, I want this perfect friend, but yet I wasn't a good friend to the people that I had in my life already. And so one thing I love when it comes to friendships is it really comes down to you and what you said, like what you can control about how you respond and how you react and how you treat people. But then also like when it comes to finding Christian friends, it's putting yourself in those situations. So going to youth groups, going to youth retreats, like just camps and fun stuff like that. And I definitely think there are seasons in friendships because I live in a tiny town right now. And honestly, I would say that my friend group is like one girl here that I actually like hung out with.
That's so real.
But yet, I have like a lot of online friends or long distance friends just because I've lived all over the United States. So when it comes to friendships, I think there's seasons and there's times where you honestly will feel lonely because I've gone through that. And then, but just putting yourself in those situations and becoming the person that you want to have as a friend.
Yeah, that's good. I love that. Like, normalize loneliness. If you hear me or Amelia say anything, like, I know that I look at I look at Amelia and her social media and stuff, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she's got to be like the funnest person who has like all these friends. And I'm sure that there are people who look at me and they think the same way.
Yeah.
But from both of us, we can both tell you there are going to be times you're going to feel lonely, where you
Yes.
might even have friends and you still feel lonely because like
Yeah.
that's just the season that you're in. Like you're having to walk through or go through something that other people don't really fully understand. And
Yeah.
so because of that, you feel lonely. And it's like you might have people there, but like you don't ever really feel like friends. But I
Yeah.
love what you said too. Like just be the friend that you want in a person. Like I think that that's definitely key. And putting yourself in those situations, like those camps, those things. Like I remember for the
Yeah.
longest time, I'd be like, I just want a friend. I want to have like best friends, but the friends I had, I wasn't stewarding well because I was like,
Yeah.
well, they're not perfect. Like, they're not that perfect Disney Channel friend that I
Yeah.
see. But like,
Yeah.
I have found in life, the friends that I have now have that are like really solid, really good friends, they started out as kind of being like, we'll talk every Tuesday, see you later. Like, I saw you
Yeah.
for one class period. But they grew into something great because we were intentional.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. And then also like with the like lonely aspect of friends and how there's seasons, one thing that I think a lot of people can fall into, which is honestly tricky, is like social media. Like you said, like if you look at me, you might be like, oh my goodness, she has so many friends.
Mm,
Yeah, there's been times where I've been like, I'm so lonely. Or like when people look at you and they're like, oh, she looks like she has so many friends. Like if you compare your life to people on social media, especially with friends, it can be just so misleading because you literally see like a tiny piece of the picture.
yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's so easy too for people who are posting on social media when they're going through something hard to just use that as their escape because they don't have to think about it. Like,
Yeah.
I know there have been times in my life that it's been really hard, and it's not out of this idea of I want to be fake. It's this idea of like, I can remind myself that my life is fun and good even when it doesn't feel like it. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm going to post another great video and then remind myself, wait, like, there's a whole nother side to my life. But
Yeah.
comparison, it will kill like
It
so much.
is so bad. Yes.
It really is. And also like I feel like sometimes when we're lonely, that's when we go to social media
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's the
And then it makes it
default.
worse.
Yeah. And then like it's the default. There have even been times when like I know that I felt super lonely and I've like gone to social media and stuff and then I've seen somebody and they've been there and I'm like, ah, and I've used it as a distraction instead of like I remember events that I've had and like this will probably go down rabbit trail, but there have been events that have happened, taken place, whatever, and I could go there and I could push myself to be around people and to seek out friends, right? But instead I'm like, no, I'm lonely because I've identified myself as lonely. And so instead
Yeah.
of like putting myself in those situations, I'm like, no, I'm just gonna sit here, scroll on my phone because I'm lonely. Nobody would want to be with me anyway. And there's a time and
Yeah.
place for that. And then there's a time and place to be like, get yourself up off the couch and go make make the best of the friends you have.
Yes. That's so good. Yeah.
Oh, the other thing is for your long distance friends, because you said you lived all over, right?
I have. Yep. A couple different states.
Okay, so tell me kind of about the story of how you like made those friends
Yeah.
and how you've kept in contact with them.
So a lot of them I've known since I was like literally baby, like super young. A lot of them have been like younger friendships. And honestly, there's been, like I said, there's seasons to the friendships. Like now, some of my best friends from Oklahoma, we just started talking like intentionally every day.
Mm-hmm.
We're all in a group chat because it's me and my sister, and then their names are Paley and Paven, and we all just talk
Aw.
all the time. I love them so much. But there's been seasons where like we haven't seen them for months, and then we just didn't talk. And then like when we all saw each other, we kind of just like regrouped where we were at. But the biggest thing I would say to keeping long distance friends is making it a priority. Like I have a couple of my friends pinned on my what's it called, messages, so I don't forget, because like how easy is it to just go through life and be like, oh, I haven't talked to them in like I don't even know the last time. So then I just keep a reminder, and it's all about communication and just updating them on your life. Really.
Yeah, no, that's the pinning tip is it. I
Yeah.
have pinned some of my group chats or friends, and that helps. And like you keep saying about seasons, and I love this because there are going to be some times where your long distance friendships are going to be super duper close, right? Because you're being
Yeah.
consistent, you're calling them, and it's good. Then there are going to be times when it's not bad on either of your parts. It's not that you don't want to talk to each other, but it's that like maybe one of the two people is more longing for like that human face-to-face interaction or that
Yeah.
connection. So you also have to realize like there are going to be seasons and times where you're going to be more distant.
Yeah.
But all it takes is one phone call to like get that going again.
Yeah.
And some friendships, I heard this on somebody's podcast. I don't remember exactly who. But I remember she was talking about friendships and she was saying like for every friend, it's going to be a different friendship. And
Yeah.
that makes sense because every
That is
person
so
is
good.
different. But like there are going to be some friends that you have where she was like, what we do is we voice memo for like 3 minutes at a time every single day.
Yeah.
And we're like still in each other's lives. And then she was like, then there are some people I have who I have a 3 hour phone call with for like once every 6 months, and that'll do us. Then there are other people who we might text occasionally, but like we barely talk. And then when we see each other, we're right back into things.
Yeah.
So just realize that like depending on the different personality, don't hold people to high expectation.
Yeah.
And depending on their personality will depend. Like have you found that in any of your friendships?
That's seriously so good. And like I will love how you said the expectation thing of like it's different for every person. Like the one of my best friends from Florida, we like rarely talk. But then when we see each other, it's like, oh, nothing's changed. And then there's some friends that like we literally talk every day. And then also like it also comes down to like I'm one of the people I feel like reaches out first, just in like a
Mm.
lot of friendships. And
Mm.
like I think one thing would be to be the person that reaches out. Like don't always wait for somebody to message you, and like just be intentional. And yeah, I love what you said. Just it's different for every single friendship, and you can't all hold them to like this friend's better than this friend, this friend's better than this friend. Like you kind of just
No.
it's different.
Yeah, that will the comparison again, comparing your friends to each other won't work
Yeah.
either. It just doesn't work. And I love what you said, be the friend that reaches out. I'm the friend who reaches out too.
Yeah.
I'm typically the friend who's like, "Hey." And there have been seasons in my life, especially when I was younger, where I'd be like, I have reached out 5 times and they haven't reached out to me. So until they reach out to me, I'm not doing anything.
Same.
And that goes two ways. Either one, they don't reach out to me until I see them in person. And
Yeah.
then they're super excited to see me, and I'm like frustrated because I'm like, you didn't reach out to me.
Yeah.
But then I realized, oh, it's not that they didn't want to talk with me. It's just that they had life going on.
Yeah.
Or the other way it happens is like I just realized I'm like, get over yourself. And I reach out to them and like because some people just are not good with that. Like I really think that God made some of us networkers, organizers, like, okay, let's get this going.
Yeah.
Put your pride aside and just pick up the phone and call them.
That is so good because like even in my life there's been times like you said where like I was like, oh, if they don't reach out, I don't want to talk to them. But like you said, God has put some people to be almost more like leaders of just like relationships and like just in life there's just different types of people. So if I'm the person that reaches out, I want to be the person that reaches out. Like I actually switched my mindset on this like
No, I like that
a
word.
month ago.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
think
I was
it should
like
be a word.
I think so too. I make up a lot of words. So if I say something weird, that's why.
Yeah,
But
I do too. I do too.
it literally it's so fun. So I just like was like I'm the type of person like I know God has made me to be a connector. And so I'm gonna do the best that I can. I'm gonna reach out to all of my friends. And if they don't reach out to me, then I think there are parts of friendships where like if you are in the same town and like it is a one-way thing. Like I had a friendship a while back ago and it was literally like me saying, hey, do you want to hang out? Hey, do you want to do this? Hey, do you want to do this? Like and it was never reciprocated and eventually you kind of just get drained and you're like I can't do this anymore. And it's not like you're giving up, but you kind of just are like kind of moving on. And but yeah, I just if you're a connector, then just do the best of that as you can. Like I don't know, I kind of think that's a cool thought of even if somebody isn't reaching out to you, you can reach out to them.
No, like God has given you an amazing role and an amazing gift to do that. And what the enemy could use as pride in our heart and bitterness of like, well, you're the one always doing this. You can see that as, no, I get to do this. Like, this is the fun part of things. And like you said, like, there are going to be times, I remember I've also had situations like that where the person, like, you were putting in effort and the other person was just kind of like, no, or they were never talking to you, like, kind of neutral or apathetic. Like, maybe they would hang out, but you could tell it was like, I don't really care if this is the last time we hang out, and you're kind of like sad. But another perspective too is like, I would say when we think of effort, we typically think of the person making the first move, the person who's like initiating, right? But effort is not just initiation. Effort is also like, I have some friends, They are so bad. Like, whenever I tell you, one of them is probably gonna listen to this and know it's about him. But they're so bad at calling me and initiating. But I know that they actually want to talk with me. Whenever I pick up the phone, that's me putting in effort. That's me initiating, right? Which is what most people see as effort. But whenever they pick up the phone and they're like, "Hey, oh my goodness, it's so good to see you." The
Yeah.
attitude in which they talk to you, that's them putting in effort. Them talking to you and having that conversation, that's them putting in effort. And just because they weren't the one to pick up the phone,
I
you can
love that.
also tell if someone's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, I have to go after 5 minutes. Oh, I don't really want to talk with you." Like, there's effort in different ways. And that just
Yeah.
kind of came to me, but like I feel like that's really good.
That is so good. I've never even thought of that. That's amazing. There's effort in different ways. I love
Yeah,
that.
no, I feel like I need sometimes I just start talking because I talk way too much. And I just start talking and I feel like I verbally process with God sometimes and I'll be praying and he'll just give me a word and I'll be like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
I do that all the time. Okay. So we have talked about friends a lot, but I want to talk about the other relationship, obviously, in your life. And that's you with your boyfriend. So I want to hear all about it. I want to hear how you guys met. Let's start with how
Yeah.
you guys met, and then we'll go from there.
It's actually such a simple story. One day, well, actually, it could be a fun story.
Mhm.
So I was driving to actually Tennessee, and all of a sudden our tire popped, and so we had to go switch our nail. We had to go like get a new tire because we were on a road trip, and I was so bored and I was in such a bad mood this day. So I was like, you know what? I never do this, but I was like, I'm gonna go to my DMs because I know there's probably some funny like God told me you're my wife. God said this. God said. This. So I was just like gonna go for some entertainment. And so I was scrolling, and all of a sudden I saw a message by a guy named Jack, who's now my boyfriend. So I pressed it, and I looked at his profile to make sure he wasn't like a complete creeper dude. And
Mhm.
so I pressed it, and he had this super sweet little message, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna like message him back. What could be the
Mhm.
harm?
Mhm.
And I also love that he loved Craig Groeschel. So I was like, okay, this guy could be kind of cool.
Right,
So I messaged
right.
him back, and we started talking, and basically that's kind of just where everything started was a DM.
That that is crazy. It's so funny to me because I do that too. Sometimes I'll like go through my requests, like my DM
Yeah.
requests, and I'm like, I gotta see what's funny. There was a guy who DM'd me recently, and I remember I sent it to one of my friends because it was so funny. He was like, "Yeah, you love Jesus. I love Jesus. I think we need to get married. Obviously, I will respect you and everything, of course, but it's time for us to get married." And I was like, but you could tell like it wasn't crazy enough that it was a bot. Like this was a legit person. I was like, "Oh my goodness."
Yeah.
Like sometimes it really is just humorous.
Yes.
But yeah, I heard that you guys met over DMs, and I think that's so funny because a lot of people I've heard meet over DMs. And it's so funny because I
Yeah.
feel like for some people, like that's what happens. That's how God used it. For me, that is not what happened. But okay, so
Yeah.
there was this really funny story where there was this dude and he had DM'd me like back in April and he had like a profile picture of a cross. So I automatically just thought like this was like some weird thing because you start to judge people by their profile pictures when you do this
For
long enough.
sure.
Because
For
there are
sure.
some really weird profile pictures, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is a lunatic person. So the fact that it didn't have a face or anything, I was like this is just weird. I would come to find out later, like it makes sense why there was no face on the profile picture. Because his account was about Jesus. Like he was also trying to be like a Christian account and stuff like that. Well, finally, I think it was June. I was doing that same thing and I'm scrolling and there this kid is and I just like press on the account and I scroll down and he looked so familiar and I was like this is kind of strange and so I messaged him back. Well, then I scroll down again and I see his shirt had on like the name of this school that's like an hour or so away from me. And I was like, wait, he goes to that school and that soccer team plays my school's soccer team. Like, oh my goodness, this guy. And then it all clicked into place because I had responded to him and we were having conversation. And I had met him. Well, technically not me. We were just like in the same room at this honor society convention. And we were literally like standing beside each other, but never spoke to each other. And then we both found each other through this like Instagram and stuff like that. And we just saw each other as like, oh, like here's another like Christian content thing. And we were having conversation talking about it. And then it clicked in a place where we were like, this is wild. So I have had stuff like that happen before, but that's probably the only like cool story
That is
that
so
I've
cool.
had.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, because some of those are just like really weird DMs. So anyway, he DMs you, y'all kind of start a conversation. Was it
Yeah.
kind of weird the first time y'all FaceTimed or anything?
Okay, this is the funniest story. So I was talking to him, and so I was in Tennessee for a day because my parents had like some work things. So I was in Tennessee, and we were hanging out with some friends. And then the next day, so we talked all day, and I was telling one of my friends, Kenzie, I was like, Kenzie, I feel like this guy's kind of legit. Like he's super cool. I didn't really think anything of it because I was
Yeah.
like, I used to be the type of person that would just like full on be like, oh my word, I love this person. And it's been like a day. So I was just
Mhm.
like, I
I
was just
feel you
thinking
on
about
that
it.
one. That used to be me too.
Yeah, I think probably every girl that has like someone has probably said that. But
Mhm.
back, so the next day, 2 days later, I was in Ohio, which is where my Aunt B lives. So if you've seen any of my videos, the crazy blonde fun aunt. So she was there, and I was telling her, I was like, Brittany, I met this guy over DMs. I know it's crazy. I don't think he's a stalker or someone crazy. So I was just telling him about him, telling her about him. And then she goes, have you like called him? And I go, no. And she goes, what if he's like some 80-year-old living in a basement texting you? And I'm like, be for real. And she's like, no. So she grabs the phone out of my hand. She goes to Jack's messages and FaceTime him. I'm screaming and she's running around her house. So I'm chasing her, trying to get the phone back. And she's like, no, come on. So she FaceTimes him and Jack answers and she was like, you're not some 80 creeper guy. So that was how our first FaceTime was. So I was like, hi. I
So
was like
so
beat
he
red.
so he really got to meet the family
He met
full.
he met the family before he even knew what he was
Wow.
getting into.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So then did y'all talk after that?
So it was like probably like a 5-6 minute conversation. We all were kind of just like hi, and then like I grabbed the phone back and was like, okay, bye, I'll text you because I didn't know what to do. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was just like done with it. And then like the next day we actually FaceTime called and it wasn't awkward at all, which I was like, thank goodness, because you know those awkward FaceTime calls. So it was kind of just like we both kind of just connected and it wasn't weird or awkward at all.
Yeah.
Good.
That's
Yeah.
really good. Your aunt probably broke the ice too.
Oh, for sure. She broke the ice literally probably like 5 times in this relationship, just with so many random things.
I love that. Good for her. I
Yeah.
aspire to be like that, like the person who's like, nope, I'm breaking the ice. I'm sorry you
Yeah.
feel awkward. I probably feel more awkward, but you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, because I've had those conversations, like those FaceTime calls where I've been like friends with somebody or DMing somebody, and then like I'm like, oh, we should like FaceTime or whatever. And there have been not often, because typically I'll FaceTime somebody or whatever. I feel like I don't do it as much anymore.
Yeah.
But especially when I was first starting and I was like making different influencer friends, I was like, this is so cool. And it was fine and it was so fun. And then I would have every once in a while, I would FaceTime someone, it would be so awkward, and their personality was, like, so different from who they texted, like they texted
Yeah.
great, and then their personality, I was like, "You act so different." So, okay, so that was good. So how long did y'all, like, talk to each other before was it you both knew from the start you were interested in each other?
Yeah. So a lot of the times people are like, I get the question a lot. How did you and Jack like know you were both ready for a relationship? And I was like, he kind of just came off the bat with like his message was like something along the lines of, "Hey, you're so pretty. You're a relationship for Jesus." Like he wasn't coming off as like, "I want to be your best friend." Like we
Right.
both kind of knew he was interested. So that's how that started. But we talked for probably about 2.5 months before we actually met each other in person.
Okay.
So our parents connected, like my mom and his mom were talking for a while, and then they were like, well, let's just meet. So we met
Oh,
him
that's
in,
awesome.
yeah. So honestly, it is a God thing of how it all just worked out. It was honestly great. So
Yeah,
his
because
mom,
I was curious about the parents thing because I
yeah,
was like, the fact that your parents were so like cool and chill with it is
yeah,
awesome because I feel like that my parents like if they're fine like with me having like different long distance friends whatever
yeah.
but like if it was something like that they would probably be like who is this person, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so this is so weird. And my dad tends to do this all the time. So on the way to Tennessee, like probably 5 hours before I opened the DM, he goes, Amelia, I feel like it was the randomest thing. He goes, Amelia, I feel like you're gonna someday meet your future husband over DM. I'm like,
Bro is prophetic.
I
Okay.
know. I was like, okay, Dad, okay. So then 5 hours later, I like answered Jack's DM and I'm like, this is weird. So now that like we're actually talking about someday getting married in 2 years, we're like, how funny is that? But
Right.
yeah, so our parents talked, and then his mom his mom just randomly came in his room one day, and she was like, we were all just talking, and I love her. She's literally the sweetest person ever. So then my mom actually reached out to her. She was like, hey, I'm Amelia's mom. I've heard that Jack and Amelia have been talking. So they became friends. And then 2 months later, I was like, Mom, I really want to meet this boy. And she was like, if you think this is legit, then we're going to go meet him. So we love going to Florida.
That's
So
really
my mom
good.
invited Aunt B to come with us.
Mhm.
So we all met in the airport. And then I don't know if you saw the video of how I first met him, but I was just like walking down the airport and I was told, so I was on the flight and my sister and everybody like planned this whole surprise. And they go, we're going to meet him at Longhorns in like 20 minutes. And so I just thought, I was like, okay, I have like 20 minutes to like prepare to meet this guy. And
Yeah,
I
because you're mentally like,
I was not ready. So I was like walking down and then all of a sudden Aunt B comes out and like if you saw the video, she was screaming. I was screaming. It was so fun. And
I
then
love the
Jack was
video.
there. So that broke the ice. I was like, I screamed, and Jack always goes, security was probably on their way because it was so funny. It was a fun day.
I love that.
Yeah.
I've watched that. I remember because when I first saw that video, I was like, this is the cutest thing. And I watched it like so many times. I was like, this is literally adorable. And he was standing there like with flowers. And you could just, because at first I was like, wait, what is happening here? And then I was like, oh, this is hilarious. And he's just like standing there with flowers, like, hi. And you're just like, ah! And then you just like hug him to like muffle the scream. Like, it was great.
Yeah.
I love that. So apparently it seems like that your family is one of surprises.
Definitely. We're very just for the go, just fun. Yeah.
I love that. And I love too how your like mom was like, okay, let's seek this out. Like she was supportive, trusted, like just let's seek this out. Let's see what happens because if it's not the real deal, you need to know so you can just like put a stop to it.
Exactly. They always say like when it comes to, since we're talking about dating, their thoughts of dating is like a lot of people go for like, oh, you can't, a lot of parents supposedly go, you can't have a boyfriend till you're 18 or you can't have a boyfriend till you're out of the house. And their thought process on dating is like, why would we not want to walk our kids through dating or like help them? So they're like, Amelia's 16, to a lot of people that is young to have a boyfriend, that's young to pursue a relationship, but they're like, we want to pour into them and we want to help them. So if this is the route that they want to go, instead of sneaking around and doing all this stuff, we want to be a part of it and like help. So that was kind of where it came from of like, okay, we'll go meet the family, we'll go see how this is, and then we'll see where to go from there.
I love that you said that because those words are the exact same words my parents have used as well.
I love
and
that.
I love it because I feel like not many of my friends have parents who are like that. Growing up in a household where my parents were like that, where that was their approach on life in general, made me trust them more, made them trust me more. Like it created such an environment of trust because I was like, oh, you're for me, you're not against me.
For sure.
And so like even with social media, so I used to like totally not be on social media at all. None of us had accounts, like just because like different things, but it's not that my parents were against it. We just had never really had accounts. So then whenever it became like my sister was going into high school, I was in middle school, people were getting it. It was becoming more of a wide thing. I remember they talked about it and they were like, listen, this is something for your whole life. People are going to have, people are going to do. And we know about the cyberbullying stuff. We know about like, cause I know that back then that was the big parent concern. Like your kid's going to get bullied if you download social media. And my parents were like, but here's the thing, why in the world would we say, no, you can't, and then when you're 18, you get it, and you're just thrown out to the wolves? Like, why don't we start, like, get your account, and let's work through this together so that if there's a problem that occurs, you can talk with us, you feel safe, like, we'll figure it out with you. And then that's whenever I ended up, like, getting my social media, like, a few years later, posting it, not realizing, like, that was the field I was going to end up in, and then here we are, but, like, and that shows too, like, total side note, how whenever you're like a parent, like, be supportive for your kid because we tend to like grow older but not grow up. Whoa, that was actually kind of good. We grow older but not grow up. Like there are adults I see that mentally still think and act like they were whenever they were young.
Yeah.
And because of that, sometimes like whenever it comes to how they deal with their kids, their default is just, oh, I'm just going to do what my parent did to me. Then their kid hates them because they're like so constrictive and stuff. And it's like, yes, there's a time and place to be constrictive. My parents, like there are things that my parents are just like, no, don't do this. But they explain to me why. They tell me like, we're looking out for you. But at the end of the day, like take a note and like try to build that trust with your parents and try to be the parent one day who's also like makes your kid want to trust you.
I love that. That's so good. Yeah.
I love how we're like 16, 17-year-olds talking about being a parent one day.
Parent. Yeah.
Parenting advice 101. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to talk to you about is just relationship, love advice, tips, all of that jazz. I know that you get asked this all the time, which is why I was honestly a little bit apprehensive because I was like, she talks about this all the time. Like when people are not asking you about that, like they're asking you about something else that they already asked you 10 billion times. But I was like, I really want to talk about this because I know that there's some people that like don't overlap in your audience who want some good like love advice. So
I love talking about it.
Okay, perfect. So give us some tips, just things that you use, ideas like how do you know that this is a person I should be in a relationship with? Like let's start there.
Yeah. Okay, so I love that. So one of the things that I do get asked a lot is like, Amelia, how do you know if I found the one, or how do you know if he's the one? And I think that is such an open-ended question because truly, my mom always goes, unless you're walking down the aisle about to get married, you don't technically know. And my mom's always like, there's not like one person for you in the entire world. Like if there was only one person, then a lot of people are getting messed up because it's going to get messed up.
Right.
So, but when it comes to relationships, I think that one thing we can look for is standards and qualities that we want in a person. So before I found Jack, and I still have this, but it's called a Dear Future Husband Journal. So I tell every girl who is single, who is even dating right now, to start a journal and just like have it dedicated to your future husband. So I write my prayers in it for just prayers for my future husband. I put qualities and standards so that when I have, like when I'm interested in the guy, then I can go back to what I've wanted, what I've prayed about, what I've journaled, and like the qualities and standards that I want to have. And you kind of compare, because let's be honest, when you're like in this little crush stage, when you're seeing this cute guy, your brain isn't all there. So you aren't thinking about like all the stuff that you know he should have, but since it's written down and it's like in stone, you know what you're looking for. And so that's when I'm like, if you're looking for the one, the way that I know that I'm marrying Jack is because he has the standards and the qualities that like I want. And you have to be specific. So like I say this as a joke, but I'm being for real. I literally pray to God and I was like, okay, this is silly, Jesus, but I know you want my heart's desires. I want a husband named Jack. That's literally what I said. I was like, I want to marry a Jack.
What?
Like,
you said that? Really?
Yes. So when I pressed Jack on the DM,
wow.
it wasn't just coincidental.
The words are not wording today. I understand.
They're not.
I said something earlier and I stuttered so bad that I was like, blah, 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 blah. What?
Yep. So I literally was like, Jesus, I want a Jack. I know you want my heart's desires. Like
crazy.
I know. And I was like, maybe somebody else will journal and maybe they want a Logan. And that doesn't necessarily mean that your husband isn't your husband if his name isn't Logan.
Right.
But I think it's just cool that if you have a journal, if you know what you want, that's how you can compare the one to the qualities and standards that you're looking for.
Yes, I love. So like pray for the signs, but you don't have to rely on them. Like I've gotten caught up before where I was like, okay, God, show me this, and if it's not this, then it's not it. And then I just get all up in my head. But I think it's cool whenever you pray for those signs. You're like, God, like, could this be a part of it? And then later down the road, if he uses that, then it's just a little bit reaffirming. But if he doesn't use it right away, it doesn't mean that that's not it. It just means maybe he's not revealing that to you yet. The prayer journal, the list, I love that. There have been times I've written like Dear Future Husband letters. I really want to get like a notebook, a specific journal for that so that I can look back though and be like, boom, here we go. But one thing I do have in my phone, and I could literally pull it up right now, I have a list in my phone and it says non-negotiables, and it's just all of my non-negotiables. Now I have other letters where I'm like, God, I would love this. Like, could you do this? But these are things that I will not compromise on because
that's so good.
Your girl can be delulu sometimes. And there have been times whenever I have been like, no, this guy though, like, it wouldn't really be that bad. Like, we can make it work. But deep down, if you are sending me a DM and you're explaining, because I've read some of y'all's DMs, you're explaining to me how he really isn't that strong in his faith, and but he has potential, and he has brown eyes and brown hair, and I know he's so cute. I know he is, but that does not mean he's husband material yet. And deep down, you know in your soul, should I be with him or should I not be with him?
Yeah, especially since I think a lot of girls, and I was this person, go into a relationship thinking I can change the person, like they can be
Oh,
completely different. No. Like you can go into a relationship and everybody can learn and grow, but I think if you're going into a relationship solely thinking that like I can change this person, you can't change them. Jesus can help, but literally it comes down to them wanting to make that decision, and a lot of people do not want to change. So I've had like, and I have multiple stories of just that. And it's like you can't go into a relationship thinking that you can change the person and like find your husband that way. If it's not like you said, if there's non-negotiables and they have nothing, but yet they're cute and they can change.
the flirt to convert does not work. Okay, that is
I love that.
that is what we're saying. It does not work. And oh my goodness, man, it gets all of us. So don't
Yeah.
feel down if you're like, man. But I've also had people who've been like, I know they're not the one. I just don't want to have to break up with them. It's gonna be harder the more time you wait. The more time you
Yes.
wait, the worse it
Yeah.
gets. The second you know, just boom, pull the plug.
Yeah.
But so you hinted on this, and I was gonna ask you this a while ago. Let's talk about the Amelia before Jack. I'm curious,
Yeah.
would you say that like there were things you had to learn before you were ready to enter into a relationship with Jack?
Yeah, I love that. So I think a lot of people, so I've been the type of girl before Jack, like I would just like, I was definitely, people would be like, oh, she was such a flirt, like she liked all these guys. But one thing that I had to really realize was I took like a complete season. I was like, there's no guys, like I need to focus on Amelia. Like who do I want Amelia to be? Because
Mhm.
when she does find the guy who God has created for her, I want to be the best version of myself. So a lot of people I think can look at singleness and almost think of it as like a curse or something that is not good, of like, am I not good enough? Why am I single? Or you can flip your perspective and be like, okay, I'm in this season and a season isn't forever. It can just be a chapter, and one page can end that chapter. Like you just flip it, and then the whole new chapter.
I love
Like,
that.
yeah. So for me, I thought during the season before Jack, I was like, okay, I don't know how long this chapter is going to be. Some chapters are a couple pages, some are a long time. So for me, it was a couple months of just like no boys, no anything, and I was focusing on myself because, for example, like I really wanted a strong man of God. Well, then I have to be a strong woman of God. If I want somebody
Yeah.
who's physically in shape, then I have to work on myself in that aspect
Mhm.
too. So the aspects that you want, you have to look at yourself back to like the friends of who are you, because who do you want? So before me, I was just like working in the waiting. Like I said, I prayed about my future husband. I had the qualities. And I love how you said that there's like non-negotiables, and you need to know that before you get into a relationship, because obviously you still learn and grow, but now you're doing it with that person. So
Mhm.
you grow it by yourself to become the best version, and now you're doing it together once you
Yeah.
have that person.
That is really good. Did you find that there was like this idea of, okay, once I meet this perfect requirement, I'll get him?
I thought that honestly for a while. I was like, I probably won't get any person until I look like this, until I act like this, until, and I think, I mean, for me personally, I think love comes like randomly. Like you're never just gonna be like, you're never gonna feel ready. And I feel like once
Mhm.
you do feel ready, then something's wrong, because you're never gonna feel like perfect for that. But Jack came out of nowhere, but yet I was in the process of, I'm still learning and growing every single day. But I was to the point where I was like, okay, God, like bring me my husband when I'm ready, but also I can get ready for as long as it takes. Like, yeah,
And
there was
I
definitely things where I thought
I love
that,
that because I think a lot of us have this idea, if you're single, business single forever,
yeah,
there's a lot of this idea of like when you're not looking for it, it'll come. And so people will chase their whole singleness trying to not look for it just so that
yeah,
it'll come. And let me just tell you this is that it's not like, okay, here's this perfect ideal I'm trying to reach. The reason we say this is because whenever you want to attract that person, like Amelia said, when you want to attract that person who is right for you need to be in a certain space for them to be attracted to you. Because if
yeah,
you're that person who's just flirting, you're like acting more immature in the way you're dealing with relationships, dating to date, whatever it is, then the person who you really want to be long term, they're not going to really be looking for you. They're going to be
yeah,
looking for another girl who actually is wifey material, you know? So whenever you get into that season that you're like focused on yourself, you are the person and you're waiting and you're content, because I also find that whenever you're content, you're confident and you don't need there to be a guy. And guys notice that. They so notice when a girl just wants attention. So whenever you're in this headspace where you're really good, it's just you and Jesus. The reason people say like that's when they found me, is because I think that's the headspace they were in, and the guy saw them and they were like, oh, that's really good. But you could be in that place of your life for 10 years before you find that person, because what also has to line up is they have to be in that spot too.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
have to know where to lead. So if you're like, oh my goodness, because I remember that I've done this before. I've been like, okay, but I've been focusing on myself and doing this for years, months, haven't found this person. And it's like, right, because it's not your time yet. You just need to continue being in that season. And some point in that season, boom, it'll happen. But it
Yeah.
might be 5 years, it might be 2 months. And you're not always gonna feel ready. You're not always gonna feel like your ducks are in a row. But like they also have to be ready. And you have to be that person, which is what I've really been trying to do, is be like, okay, there's going to be someone out there. Who do you want? Who do you want to have? And then let's get super practical. I love how you were like, I want a guy who works out. I need to start working out. He's a guy who works out is not just going to be like, here's a couch potato. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. And the cool thing is like how you said how they have to be ready too. And if you don't know them, then you don't know what's going on in their life right now. So before I knew Jack, our stories are honestly, they kind of lined up in the same way. He is an incredible testimony. But like he had a season where he swore off girls and social media and all this stuff, and he focused on himself so that when he found his wife, then he was ready too. So like you never know what's going on in their aspect. And you're like, if you're sitting here and you're a girl that's like, I'm single, and like you said, like I'm ready and I've been working on myself. Well, be thankful that maybe you haven't found the guy yet, because timing is everything. And like if I would have met Jack probably 2 years ago, there's no way in the world that I would be with him.
No.
So like it's definitely a timing thing. And some girls are like, why does this girl get it first? Why does this girl get it first? I don't really have the answer besides the fact of like it is different for every single person, and every single person is in a different chapter of their life. So
that is so true.
Will come.
Yeah, sometimes there really isn't an answer to why God puts it on. But I do think that there are little things he does where once you get it, you'll go, I understand. And all of a sudden it'll click into place, and they're just personal sweet moments for you and God to have.
Yeah.
But just because you don't have it now doesn't mean you're not going to have it ever.
Yeah.
And no matter what age you are, whatever it is, like I think sometimes God protects us because there are people out there and they do not need to live in the same town as you, and you do not need to know them, because if you did know them, you would never be with them. But like literally, like she said, a chapter ends with just a page turn. It could happen for you tomorrow. And I really think that that's like in approaching life, that's the type of faith God wants us to have in every season. Like this might be your season of sorrow. This might be your season of not having this. But I could change it tomorrow. Believe that I can change it tomorrow, and live right now with the same thankfulness and gratefulness that you would give me if you had that thing. And that's hard, but it's so worth it. So the other more questions. Obviously, like, did you think, okay, I'm gonna have a relationship? You probably didn't, because you'd worked so much that you were like, this idea may not have been there. But I know some people think, okay, I'm gonna get into a relationship, it's gonna fix all my problems, it's gonna make me happy.
Yeah.
Did you kind of have to learn like, oh, this makes me happy, but it doesn't fulfill my everything?
Yeah, for sure. I would say we say this a lot, but it's literally so true. Until you have true satisfaction in Jesus, because a lot of people ask me, and this was one of the things you said we were going to talk about, was like joy, and how you like are always full of joy. And I get asked a lot because like on social media, I feel like it's such a highlight reel, but also you do share a lot of the happy points in your life. And so people are like, Amelia, how are you always so happy? And I think that the main thing is like, we can't let external parts of life like impact our internal. And so a lot of the things, like you can't control what's going to happen in your life. Like you can try, but you can't control everything. But you can always control how you respond to certain situations. So like I feel like I have a lot of joy and peace just knowing that Jesus is always there and that he's going to turn anything for good. And so that brings me happiness and joy. But also like when a person comes into your life, like Jack, when he came into my life, it definitely didn't fix every problem. Like there's still a bunch of internal stuff that I had to fix and I had to figure out. And like, and honestly, sometimes can make it more complicated, because when it comes to now there's another person that I love and care about that I have to work on myself for, and I have to like, we're both on a journey together now. But I think if you're going through your life thinking that once I find this one person, I'll be happy, you're never going to be happy, because it's all internal in your relationship with Jesus.
It takes a perfect person to fix all your problems, and no human's perfect.
Yeah.
Like, like Jesus is perfect, which is why his love can do it. And I just preached to some 6th graders, like, at one of my school's chapel. I preached to them, and I had this analogy of this cup, and I had this person, we were, like, talking about common things that, like, we try to make us feel loved.
Yeah.
And one of them was boyfriend and girlfriend. And what happened is that cup with water, we poured all of the water in the cup, and it only reached, like, halfway. And I was like, look, like, and this is so cool to me. I'm like, there's sometimes a person is giving 100% of the love they have to give.
Yeah.
And we're blaming this half empty on them. We're saying, well, you should have more love. You should be doing better. All of these things. The problem sometimes isn't that they're not giving out all their love or they're not doing the best they can. The problem is sometimes we're not supplementing with God's love. And He created our heart at a capacity where that wouldn't satisfy us. So, like,
Yeah.
actually going to God and saying, okay, God, I want to be filled. No person is going to be perfect. And you have to, like, satisfy yourself with that. And it's hard, but you learn. Like, I remember before the one, like, relationship I had, I remember this realization, this halting realization of, like, wait, like, this makes me really happy and I like being in a relationship, but wait, you're telling me that it doesn't end like the rom-coms do? Like, it doesn't just make everything in life, like, just like, you have to work for it.
Yeah.
And when it comes to working for it, like, so for the people who are dating and who are in relationships, can you just give, like, the tips that you have found that have really
Yeah.
worked with you and Jack?
Yeah, so seriously, I think the number one big thing in our relationship, since we are long distance, but I think this can apply to seriously any couple, is communication. So,
Mm.
like, as simple as it sounds, like, Jack and I tell each other everything. Like, we were honest about anything. Like, if we have just a question about anything, like, there was this one time and we were just talking, and he had a question just about, like, so I'm moving to Florida, and I'm going into a bigger youth group. So he was like, what happens if he kind of gave me this, like, scenario, and he was like, what happens if this, like, amazing Christian guy comes up to you? What happens if XYZ happens and, like, all this stuff? And he was like, would you still choose me? And I think a lot of people, if they were in a relationship, would be like, instantly almost put a guard up and be like, do you not trust me? Do you not think that this is going to happen? Like, I love you. But, like, he genuinely had a question. And so I'm going to answer it. And I will tell him as many times as it takes to be like, no, I love you. And I'm going to choose you every day. And just because, like, it's a constant reassurance. And if you have a question for your boyfriend or your girlfriend, ask it. Like, if there's, like, situations where you don't want them in, explain it. Like, I think a lot of people just go through life thinking, oh, they know what I'm thinking. No, they don't. Like,
Mhm.
you have to overly be like, just talk to them. Like, it genuinely just comes down to just talking to the person you love. And the second thing that we do that I absolutely love, and I was so nervous at first to do this, was every single night we pray together. And in other relationships that I've had, or, like, friendships or whatever, I've been so insecure, like, anxious about the relationship. Just, and I think any girl will be like, what if, what if, what if, or even guy. But
Yeah.
when it comes down, once we started praying, I feel like all of that went away. Like, we just pray
Mm.
together, and we're not perfect, but, like,
Mm.
one night I'll pray, the next night he'll pray, we go back and forth. And if we
I
miss a
love
day,
that.
I love it. It's seriously, it's one thing that I think a lot of Christian couples overlook is praying with their spouse. And actually, Craig Rochelle talks about this.
I was just gonna say that. Like, I hear that all the time from him.
Yeah, yeah. So him and Amy do it. And so Jack one day, before we were actually even, like, officially dating, he was like, do you want to start praying with each other every night? And he was like, I think that's a habit that we should start. And so ever since then, we've just been praying together. And it's probably those are my two main tips, is praying together and communication.
I love so much about that example, the first example you gave, so much, because I see so much of, like, on one hand, you have insecurity, and on the other hand, you have trust. And
Yeah,
whenever you trust your partner to where you're able to be vulnerable about your insecurity, like the fact that he came to you and was like, okay, hypothetical,
yeah,
you know that he trusts you, and you
yeah,
know that he trusts you because he wasn't trying to be passive aggressive in any way. He wasn't trying it wasn't about what he wasn't saying. It was
yeah,
about, okay, can you make sure, like, can you calm my fears a little bit? Because we
yeah,
all have those thoughts in our head that we're afraid to say because we're afraid, like, oh, they're gonna think. They've probably had those same thoughts too. I love that. So it's like whenever there's even a thought in your mind of, like, could this be, or a concern,
yeah,
an issue in any way, talk to them about it the second
yeah,
it comes, even if it's a tiny fear. I love that so much, and I need to, like, start writing down these tips so that when I get into a relationship, like, that's perfect. Just communication, and then the prayer thing is still communication. It's just with God, and, like, man, I have found, because I've just started doing this where, like, every night I have, like, an actual list, and I'm intentionally just praying, and sometimes it's short and sometimes it's long, and I'm just specifically doing nothing but praying. because I used to just pray like whenever I was doing stuff, but now I'm like, okay, no, this is a time I'm gonna pray. People totally like underplay prayer.
Yeah.
But prayer is not like, okay, I'm putting coins into the bank of God so that one day he'll bless me. Like it's not like I'm investing God. What's happening when you're praying is because you're fixing your eyes on God, your heart starts to change and it starts to move towards God and it starts to align with God. And it is so cool. I mean, I can imagine what it does for you guys' relationship as y'all continually you're like, okay, here's our problems or here's our argument or whatever it was, or like here's our desires, but oh, I'm aligning it with God. And I feel like that probably also helps you keep your boundaries and helps you keep other things because you're going back to God.
Yeah. 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 God has to be the center for a relationship to truly work.
And if you want him to be the center, you have to put him there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my goodness, man, this is good. Like this episode has been really good. I have been like so impressed with like just all of the advice I feel like I've gotten from you. And man, like Amelia is just such a great example too of it doesn't matter how young you are, you can start doing ministry now in whatever way you can impact the people around you. Like just live a bright light where you are. And so I feel like that's a great way to wrap up this episode because it was, man, that was just awesome. I hope you guys really got something out of this. Tag me if you listen to this podcast, tag Amelia. I would love that. Amelia, can you just tell them where to find you? She has a podcast. She has clothes that she has now. She has all the things. And I think Jack has a podcast too. So if you're a guy, you want a little dude check out Jack's podcast too.
Yeah. Yeah. So my podcast is called the Who Is She Becoming podcast. My mom and I do that together. You can find me on Instagram. It's a girl Jesus. And then TikTok is Amelia Mielke. And then Jack's podcast is called him and his best friend Griffin talk about becoming a man of God. And it's called From Boys to Men podcast. And it's so good. So,
I love that. Okay. So I'm going to put all of those in the show notes, the description, all that jazz. Go follow her. You will not regret it. She's so fun to follow.
You're so sweet.
And thank you so much, Amelia, for being on the podcast with me.
This was so fun.
So fun. I'll see you guys next Tuesday. Have an amazing week.
Bye.
So catch me if I fall.